Okay, hi everybody. Welcome to another installment of Talking Away the Taboo with, we're going to be talking tonight with Myriam Steinberg, who is really a wonderful author of this incredible graphic novel called Catalog Baby. And she's going to be talking about her life as a single mother and as she was, wanting to build a family and wanting to grow her family and really didn't have options because she didn't have a partner, and sort of that journey and the exploration and how she took her experience as an author, as everything that she is, and she talked about it and she wrote about it, and I'm thrilled to be having her here to talk about her experience and her work. So we're just going to wait for her to come on. Let me grab her. Let me make sure that she's here. Give me 1 second. Okay, she now has it, and we're going to wait for her. If anybody has any questions, please let us know. You can drop it in the box. This is, and I'm going to write it in here, what this live is. This is actually a two-part series, so to speak, because we are doing a, 1 second, let me just write this. Let me write her name in here. We are doing another lecture on Tuesday night, which is the third in our series for our summer lecture series, which is basically talking about this post-COVID mentality of how do we bring people into our community? How do we get them to feel more comfortable? And I think a lot of us are feeling this sense of disjointment because COVID is clearly not over, especially in the United States. The cases are rising again. But still, okay, I'm seeing that she's unable to join. We're gonna try this again. Everybody hold on, we're getting there. Welcome to technology. Let's try her one more time. So that lecture on Tuesday, as I grab her here, that lecture on Tuesday is going to be with Rachel Herkman, who is a licensed clinical social worker. It's going to be with Khani Wasner, who is Farmy in the City here on Instagram, who talks a lot about her experience as a single woman. And it's also, and here she is.
Yes, I am.
Finish this last piece here. And it's also going to be with Yael Abramson-Braun, who is the divorce specialist, who's going to be talking about the divorce community. So this, Myriam, this is telling everybody, this is really a two-part series talking about individuals in the community like yourself who are trying to build a family, who are just sort of out of the quote, whatever normal is, because none of us know what normal is. And like, I think the word is like ridiculous, right?
Yeah.
And so I'm so thrilled to be able to bring you here and to talk about your life and your work and so on. So
I'm just going to plug in really quick.
okay, all good. Welcome everybody to real life. This is called real life, when you run around and you like try to find a place to plug in, and you try to find like where nobody's going to bother you and where nobody's going to do anything, because we all know, as we're living through a pandemic currently, we all know how crazy life is. And it's not to, and Myriam also is on the West Coast, and so she's 3 hours behind, so it's still frankly the middle of the day there, so it's all good.
Yes. All right. We have silence away from twins. We have Myriam focused.
Excellent.
There we go. Right.
Excellent. Okay, breathe. First of all, breathe. It's all good. Try, as you know, I mean, and many of the followers know, I also have twins. So the fact that like you can like take a moment and like be a person as opposed to a mother, and like take a moment and have adults speak is actually like an incredible thing. And like it takes like a second to have that like mind shift. So I totally hear you. Okay, introduce yourself, please. Tell everyone who you are.
So my name is Myriam Steinberg. I used to run a festival, and that's kind of really where the whole journey to becoming a single mother by choice started, because I kind of let my career take over my life, and then I hit 39 and I was like, oh, whoops. And so I went on a mad rush to like try and find somebody. And I met some guy and I was like, all right, well, he likes me. Let's see if it works. And like, of course, like at the back of my mind was always like, baby, 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 baby at this point, which really affects the dynamic of a relationship, even if you don't talk about it.
Totally.
Yeah. And then eventually, a few months later, I was like, okay, we need to have this conversation right now. And long story short, he wasn't ready for kids, didn't want kids. And by then I was already 40, and I'm like, can't wait. So we broke up. And it was a really brutal time because it was also the festival that I was running. I had run for 11 years and I burnt out big time from that. And so I shut down the festival. I no longer had a relationship and I no longer had time to
Wow.
try and find a partner and have a baby. So it was like kind of a big like influx of every like what's confluence of all the factors that are prime for just like, ah.
What? Okay, so let's go back for 5 seconds. What
Yeah.
festival was this? First of all, like, what were you running? Like, what was this thing that had so much of your life for the previous 10, 11 years?
So it was called the In the House Festival, and it was live performance in people's living rooms and backyards. So it
Wow.
was like music, dance, circus. Like we even had like 30-foot towers with trapeze artists, and it was in somebody's backyard, and magicians and storytellers and burlesque dancers, and so there was like a big festival once a year, and then a performance series every month, and then a big giant theater-based haunted house. So it wasn't just like they're I'm gonna murder you kind of thing, you know. It was they were yeah, it was crazy. So it was a lot of work. I mean, it was easy because I was so used to it and whatever, but it took over completely. Yeah.
I yes, I mean, I only know how it is running like small projects, not for like, year-long projects and for like multi-years at a time. So I can only imagine. And that makes sense when you kind of like wake up, as you were saying, you're like, oh, like the clock is ticking. So now what?
Exactly.
Okay.
Yeah, and it's a
So
terrible place to be.
yeah, sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off. Go ahead.
No, no, that's it.
So okay, so you found this guy, you thought it was going to work. It didn't work. He didn't want to have kids, even though he may have been like a great partner, but he didn't want to have kids. And you were laser focused on that because you were 40, which totally makes sense. So then what?
So then after we broke up, I was like, okay, I will give myself 6 months up to my birthday to find somebody. And if I don't meet anybody, then I'm just going to do it on my own. And historically, like I've always had these giant gaps between partners and so I was like, hey, well, it might take like 2 or 3 years before I meet somebody for all I know. So I waited that time, but I was kind of smart. I just like went into the logistic mode and I was like, okay, what if there's a waiting list at the fertility clinic? So even before my time was up, I called the clinic and I was like, okay, I need to make an appointment. And I was totally right. There was a 7 month wait list.
Oh my, okay.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. So I actually didn't get to see them until May. My birthday's in April. So it was like really amazing timing. And my birthday came and went. I didn't meet anybody. And I was like, all right, there goes like all my fantasies of finding that happily ever after and blah, blah, blah. And like had always been a given to me, like not even like a conversation I ever really had. I just like assumed somewhere subconsciously that I was gonna easily meet somebody and have those kids when I was younger. And then it was like now I think about it, I'm like, even at 25, it felt like 30 was a million years away. And then, like I started working on the festival just after 30 and I was like, okay, no, just before 30. And then, yeah, and then that's when it took over.
Right. I think this is very relatable. I mean, at least for myself, where I feel like each of us sort of have this line in the sand of where, like, when we're younger, we have this idea of what our life is going to look like. And we think, like, okay, when I get to this point, if it doesn't look like that, then I'm going to do something about it, whatever that means. But, like, I'm going to do something about it. And we each have that line in the sand. at a different time. But then sometimes, like as you were saying, like life just takes over, so you get involved with other things, and then that gets squashed down.
Hmm. Oh, absolutely. Yeah. And it's like, I don't think I don't think I purposely squashed it down because I do believe that, like there's going to be sacrifice on both sides of the coin. But if you have a passion project, like, and you want a baby, especially in hindsight, I'm like, do both at the same time, like figure it out somehow. And I know it's so difficult to sometimes imagine what that looks like. And it's so hard to get out of that point of like, when I'm ready financially, when I'm ready, I'll have my house, I'll have my this, I'll have my that, and then I'll have the baby because then I'll feel stable. But there's always going to be something,
Right.
right?
Right. It's so interesting because we also here in this community, in this space, we had a discussion a couple of weeks ago about this like work-life balance,
Mm-hmm.
and basically talking about how like how does your work interplay with the family that you want? And like it could be like in a million ways, right? Do you stay in a job longer because you know that that job has insurance, whereas if you move and you go freelance or whatever it is, that you may not have the ability to have someone else pay for your fertility treatments? Do you stay in a quote dead end job because it gives you more flexibility to have these early morning appointments or like take time off as needed, knowing that you're going to stay sort of in that job just until you get there? Like there are like a million like permutations of like that. And we had a very long discussion about it. It's not only the like, should I or should I not like try right now, but it also like all of these things come into play also later on potentially as well.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And I think that at a certain point, certainly for me, like I just had to prioritize. Like you just no choice. I had my little bio clock, like you'll see in Catalog Baby. You've read Catalog Baby,
Yeah.
right? There's like the little bio clock sitting on my lap. She's like this badass Calamity Jane kind of character, right? She's just like doesn't take any shit from anybody, and she's like certainly didn't take any shit from me. It's like kicking my butt and being like, now, now, now. Okay, what about now? And just like it became this like biological imperative that I've never experienced anything like it, where it was so overwhelming, so completely consuming. And it was just like, okay, I don't have a choice but to prioritize trying to have a kid.
Okay, so take us like so you like take us from the point of like you have your first appointment, and then I don't want to give too many spoilers because we obviously want to make sure that people read the book and go out and buy it, and we want to make sure to do all of that. But get us sort of like a little bit further, and then like okay, we all know the end. The end is that you had twins, and then I want to hear also about this like idea about how to write and when to write and sort of when that all happened. So talk to us a little bit more about the timeline here.
Do you want me to talk more specifically about the fertility journey
Yeah,
or the
like a little bit more about that, but and then like into the writing piece of it.
Sure. Okay, so I went into all of it, had all my tests, and everything came out hunky dory. Despite my age, my all my hormones were great. Physiologically, everything was great. All my blood work came out amazing. And they're like, no problem. And I actually got pregnant on my first IUI because they said, you don't need IVF. You're good. Just do IUI. Um, and I used an anonymous sperm donor from a bank for the IUIs. Um, and then I had a miscarriage the day before my first ultrasound, which I mean, for all of you out there who have had a miscarriage or any other kind of fetal loss, infant loss, we all know how devastating it is. And it just like the earth shook, and I was like, oh, like everything isn't. I was never told that this could actually happen, and I was like, none of my education led to the possibility that I could have a miscarriage. And so it just really shook me. Um, but I was still like, okay, I'm gonna keep going. And I tried, I kept trying, I kept trying, I kept trying. One time the fertility clinic was closed, and I was like, but I'm gonna ovulate. I must have an insemination. And so then I did a DIY. I had a friend when I was looking for a sperm donor, and I was deciding between a known donor and an anonymous donor. I had actually randomly bumped into a friend at the blood clinic when I was getting my tests, and they offered themselves as a donor, and so I phoned him and I was like, so how do you feel about maybe in a couple of weeks, like revisiting this whole notion of being a donor? And he said yes. And so we quickly kind of put together a contract, and him and his partner had also just had a baby. And she was all on board. They were really, really amazing about it. And they came over when the LH sticks had a big smiley face, and they went into my studio and did their thing and filled a cup. And I went in afterwards, and it was one of the most hilarious moments of my whole journey, actually. It was just like so ridiculous. You'll have to read the book to like get all the nitty-gritty details about it, but it was so funny. And that didn't work. So I went back to IUI, and I got pregnant on my 7th try again. And then I found out that there was a genetic anomaly with the baby. And I just had to decide. Here I am, a single mom by choice. Yes, I have a supporting community, but like fundamentally, you're completely alone in this journey, right? Like nobody's going to wake up at 2 a.m. with a baby with you. And so I'm faced with like a 50-50 chance that the baby's going to survive in the first place. And then like if he does survive, what kind of developmental delays and physical delays or disabilities would he have? And then like, how do I cope with that?
You knew the baby was a boy. You keep referring to the baby as a he, so you knew the baby was a boy.
Yeah, he was a boy. Yeah. And that was actually I found out he was a boy by accident because when I went to the midwife, so I went for the SIPS test, which is the initial test to see if there was an issue, because I was geriatric pregnancy at 40, whatever I was at that point. And they found all these flags. And so I was talking to the midwife about it, and she's like, "Oh, well, you could go and do an NIPT test and see if he's going to be okay." And I was like, "Wait a minute, the baby's a he?" And so she was like, "Oh, whoops. Yeah. Did you want to know? Because I'm really sorry if you didn't." So yeah. Anyways, so then, sorry, is this okay?
So it's totally fine. Well, look, what I always say to people is, and that we'll know if they're watching afterwards that they should just be aware that they're around, which I think is great.
Yeah. Well, hopefully, Abigail, tu peux aller dans la cuisine, s'il te plaît? Non. Oui. Non. Oui. Non. Okay, alors tu fais pas de bruit. Sorry. I would show them, but they're naked, so.
I'm trying to do this live. Everyone should know we've been trying to do this live maybe for 6 months. It feels like it's been that long, and
it's been longer, I think.
Maybe long. See, she's calling me out and saying that it's longer.
It's been 8 months.
Okay, I canceled, I think, maybe a dozen times. Maybe Myriam has said it's not a good time, maybe once. I'm not even sure it's once. I think it's all been on my part. So the fact that I have her here and she's able to talk to me and all of you and whatever, I'm incredibly grateful for. So
yeah.
And it's not working because it's too. Do it again in another half an hour. If that's better, you'll have to tell me.
It's all good.
Okay.
There's somebody to take care of the kids. So
okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, okay. So you know, sorry, genetic and it's a boy. And
yeah.
So now what happened?
So I had done an NIPT test and it confirmed it. Okay, bye-bye. Okay, bye-bye. Bisous. That's Abigail. Isaac, vas-y. Okay. Non, maman. Ok, tu donnes un bisou et puis tu vas avec Pascal. Ok, bisous et puis Pascal. Mouah. Ok, bye bye. Non, toi tu t'en vas. Non, oui, avec Pascal. Dans le salon. Ok, va dans le salon.
Real life. It's all work for
Real life. This is better than when I had to do an Insta live on while my kid was on the toilet, constipated and screaming.
okay. Yeah, that would be better. This would be better.
Yeah, yeah, this is much better. All right, so we are now baby free again. Sorry, everybody.
Okay. Okay, so tell me a little bit more about what did you decide to do with this baby?
So I decided to terminate, and I mean, my heart's just kind of going right now as I talk about it. And it doesn't matter how often I talk about it, it's still like, because it's like, how do you feel? There is no right answer, is the thing. And everybody was always like, you'll find the right answer for you. And I guess that was kind of like the key was like for you. It's like the right answer for you.
Right.
And I still don't think there was a right answer per se. It just felt like the answers showed up. And that I think like the clincher was like I saw online like a course for people with this trisomy, like how to hold a pencil when they're like 6 years old or 10 years old. And I was like, oh my God, is this what
Right.
Yeah. So.
Look, you know what? I think, when I speak to parents who have chosen to terminate for medical reasons, you're right that there is this concept of like, you make a decision that's right for you, and for every person, that choice is different. But this, like the fact that you said here right now that it's still like, it still sits in your heart and it's still something that you think about and still something like, that's a piece that doesn't go away. Every family that I talk to that has done a termination for medical reasons, not for other reasons, that's a totally different conversation, but specifically a termination for medical reasons, they all have this pit. Like they all know that they made the right decision for them at that time, for their circumstance. They all know that, but it doesn't mean that they don't have this pit. Like every single person I know carries it with them.
Absolutely. And I mean, every year on his due date, I have a ceremony for him.
Amazing.
And yeah, and I've actually also added the other 3 babies that I lost through miscarriage to that ceremony. So every year I write them a letter and then I go to the lake and I read the letter out loud and I burn the letter, except when it's monsooning out because it's in January. And this last year there was too much rain, so I just like scrunched it up and threw it in the lake. But normally I like light the letter on fire and then just kind of meditate in front of the lake, and it's just like a really beautiful moment, and a moment of sadness and a moment of gratitude also that they were in my life, because from the first miscarriage, that's kind of, I became a mom the first time I was pregnant.
Yes.
Yeah.
So, and I personally look at, as a physician, I personally always have a tremendous amount of gratitude for choice, for the fact that choice exists, that people have the ability to make the decision that works for them, the fact that medical science exists, the fact that there are safe places to do procedures like this. There's a lot of things to be grateful for, even in the midst of horrificness and sadness and grief. So absolutely. Okay, so that obviously took time, and it took time to process and to deal with, and not that you were ever over it, because nobody ever is, as we're just discussing. But how did you then sort of, refocus? I don't know that focus is the right word, but then, decide to move forward with whatever came next?
Well, fundamentally, the story didn't change. I still wanted to have a baby.
Right.
It was alive and healthy. But what did change was I hit a wall, physical, mental, emotional, spiritual, where I was like, I cannot keep going without having genetic testing on the embryos. And so that's when I switched over from IUI to IVF.
Right.
I also had to heal from pneumonia. Well, no, actually, the pneumonia came after the IV, after the during the last IVF. I think I ended up with like walking pneumonia for several months, and then I ended up with full-blown pneumonia, just from the stress and the body breaking down and all that.
Okay.
But yeah, I switched to IVF and I did the first 2 rounds, got lots of eggs, an okay number of embryos, and none of them were viable. Yeah. And then the third round, I got one viable embryo, which I was so excited about, and then I promptly miscarried it.
Oh gosh.
Yeah. Yeah. So there again, so then that's when the pneumonia really hit hard. Um, and I came to another crossroad, and like I hit another wall, and these walls I didn't know existed until I hit them,
Right.
because otherwise, like talk to me at IUI 5, I'm like, I'm just gonna keep going with this until I get success.
Right.
And then same with the IVF, I'm like, I'm just gonna keep going with IVF until I have a live birth, right?
I think that, you know what, I think that all of us sort of in this space like have the same concept. I think it's this notion, like when people hear that you're trying to have a baby or like that you're struggling, everyone's like, well, just do IVF. As if like, number one, IVF is not the only thing you can do. And number two, just doing IVF is not so simple as we all know.
It's really not. It's like, I mean, my belly was black and blue. I gained so much weight, and I was lucky that like I didn't have the hormonal shifts that affected my emotions, and I didn't break out into zits all over the place like that. I was lucky, but like a whole bunch of other stuff, and yeah, it takes an enormous toll, and like forget the physical stuff, like the constant waiting. Like you have to wait for your body to be ready for your first shots. You have to be ready for your follicles to be big enough to extract. You have to wait the 2 week wait, or no, sorry, the time it takes to get them genetically tested. Then you have to wait for your body to be ready again for an embryo transfer. And then you have to do the 2 week wait. And like you look on social media and like there's so much stuff about just the 2 week wait and how torturous it is, right? And then you add to that like all the other ingredients that IVF includes, and it's like it feels like you're waiting for 600 years.
At least, at least.
Yeah, at
Absolutely.
least. Yeah.
Absolutely. Um, okay. So then what happened? So then what happened after the waiting?
So after the waiting, I mean, like I said, I couldn't do a transfer the first one, second one. The third one I did a transfer, I miscarried. And then I had nothing left. And I didn't have any embryos left. I didn't have any, I was like, everything is working against me for my own biology. And I had to decide, am I going to keep going or am I going to use egg donors? And a lot, like 99.9999999% of people are like, why don't you just adopt? And that became a really huge trigger for me, not because I don't believe very fervently in adoption and don't think it's amazing, but it wasn't where I was at. And it's not an easy process. It's like this giant myth that adoption is simple and cheap and guaranteed, and none of those are true most of the time.
Correct. It's the same thing. Like this, I find that like the same people or the same, it's coming from the same place of like why don't you just do IVF is the same, like, why don't you just adopt? It's like, it's all the same in my head.
Yeah. Yeah. So, but what I was starting to kind of dabble in was like, okay, do I do an embryo donation or do I do donor eggs as well as donor sperm? I looked into embryo donation, and in Canada, it's quite complicated, and there are very few embryo banks. And it was kind of like doing a live adoption. So you had to go through the whole social work process. The donors had to approve you as a parent, and as a single mom, like your chances are like,
Right.
I mean, your chances are there are chances. It's just that they're a lot less. And also what was really important to me was to get information about the donors, like their physical health, their like just kind of what they looked like, and that information was essentially not available.
Interesting. Okay.
Yeah, yeah. So that kind of can, even though it was significantly cheaper than going to an egg bank, um, I chose to go to an egg bank. And then like two things kind of made me feel a little bit better about it was that um, going through an egg bank was kind of the same price as doing 3 IVF rounds.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah. And I was like, okay, so I did 3 IVF rounds and it didn't work out. Who's to say that I wouldn't go through another three and get the exact same result,
Right.
right? So okay, financially that kind of squared. And then also like their money back guarantee, which I never ever in my entire life thought I would put that like money back guarantee thing in
Right.
front of me having a baby. But it is so expensive. So the fact that if you did not have a live birth after, I think it was six batches of eggs, and each batch contains 7 or 8 eggs, and you might get like 7 or 8 embryos from them, or you might only get one. That happened to me the first round. Um, and so if after 6 rounds, 6 batches, you had nothing to come home with, then they would give you 100% money back. If you tried at least once, but then were like, okay, this wasn't for me, then they would give 80% of your money back. So it's like, okay, let's do this. And then epigenetics came along. Like people started talking to me about epigenetics. I'm like, that's really cool.
Yeah. So
Okay.
tell people, for people who are not familiar with what that is, tell people what that is.
So, okay, I hope I get this right, but basically, epigenetics says that your environment informs what strands of your DNA will wake up or stay asleep. So, it's not that you have the same DNA as your baby necessarily. So, if I have donor egg, donor sperm, they're biologically completely different than me. But because they're gestating inside my belly, the environment influences what wakes up and what doesn't. So, maybe they'll have some of the same ticks as me, or maybe there's like, I don't know, uh, I don't know, their skin color. I don't know, like stuff.
Right.
There's like,
Yes.
it's impossible to tell what, but you will notice resemblances. Like you'll often be like, oh, they look like me somehow, but in a very indefinable way.
Right. It's the concept that even though it's exactly what you just said, even though the genetics are different, but it's the concept of that the environment in which they are contributes to the total outcome of what an embryo, a baby is, personality wise or physically,
Mhm.
sort of either or. So there, right there, and there. This is like relatively new research, but it definitely does say that environment here, the uterine environment matters. So
Oh yeah.
yeah,
And my daughter is like so much like me in so many ways. It's so interesting.
fascinating, fascinating.
Yeah.
So jump ahead because I really want to make sure that we have time to talk about the book because that's
Yeah.
the other reason why we're here. So jump ahead into, what ended up happening, the end of the story, and your beautiful twins.
Sure. So the first donor, uh, I had one viable embryo miscarried again. So I switched, yeah, I had to switch egg donors because she no longer had any left. And the second donor, I got 5 viable embryos, which was so amazing. And my doctor was like, okay, well, because of your history, we're going to put 2 in. Total surprise. We'd never talked about this before. And I was like, what? Okay, oh, okay, better 2 than none. And so they did. And then the next day I was like, I think you guys both took.
Un-
And they did. Yeah, it was super crazy. I had like all these really weird woo-woo moments with these twins. And several of the other pregnancies too. But yeah, it got confirmed eventually at the ultrasound that I had 2 babies. And it was actually a very, very difficult pregnancy. my son's water broke at 18 weeks.
Gosh,
So, yeah, I don't think you know this, do you?
no, I was
Mm.
gonna say no. Yeah.
Yeah, so it's called PPROM, and so I was on bed rest for 4 months, and everybody except my own OB, but like all the other OBs and the perinatologists, blah blah blah, they're like, "You need to terminate him and to give your daughter the best chance." I'm like, "There is no way I am going through that again." So we lived. They were born 2 months early, 2 months in the NICU for him, 1 month for her. And now they're home, and as you probably overheard, they're vibrant and silly and fun, and yeah, I beautiful boy girl twins.
And delicious. How old are they now?
They're 2.5.
Okay. So tell us now, like, when did the concept of this book start? How, like, just like walk us through that process.
Well, interestingly, I started writing the book before I even had my first egg donor. So I didn't had no idea what the outcome was going to be. All I knew was that as I was going through this journey, I didn't have the resources that spoke to me. So I was like, okay, I need to do something. And there were so many like what the fuck moments and like it's crazy, crazy stuff happening all the time, medically and otherwise.
Yep.
Like, and it was kind of the crazy stuff that was like, this is a story that needs to be told because there's all the whole grief thing, but there's also the really funny moments. And I think it's really important when you have such an intense story as this that once you realize the really crazy funny moments exist, that you're a human and it's like the story is real and it's relatable and it's like both crushing and soul filling.
Yeah, it'll always be like, truth is stranger than fiction type of thing, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And so anyways, I was like, hey, do I do it as a theater thing? No, I'm not a theater person. So I chose to do it as a graphic novel because there's just so many moments that are so visceral and so inexplicable and that just don't have the words to explain it. And I'm a very visual person, so and all these visual metaphors just kept popping in my head, and I felt like you could really layer all the different emotions um, into a single thing. It just like packs a wallop, right? Like when you're reading just words, you can project your own story onto the words that you're reading, but when you
Right.
see it visually as well, you are in that author's story. Like you cannot escape it really. Um, and so I found that really a compelling way to tell the story and really kind of helped give the true truth of it for me.
And
And
go ahead.
yeah.
No, I mean, I guess my question also is like, how did you, now that you sort of had the format of what you wanted to write, was it something that you kept up all along and like every few days or every few months something else would happen that you would add on to, or it was all, retrospective?
It
Woo!
was both. You
You
okay?
lost me for a second. Keep going. Go ahead.
So I actually, one of the things, because I was doing it on my own, I had asked my friend to videotape and photograph everything from the start. I didn't even know that a book was in my future.
Oh,
I just thought this was going to be like a cool thing to look back on and to maybe share some moments with my kids if I managed to have kids and my friends and kind of create this intimacy around it. So when I started writing the book, I had hours of footage. I had tons of photographs and I could just go back and I was really lucky my fertility clinic let me film everything. The ultrasounds, the egg retrievals, the embryo transfers, like everything was filmed. And I also like with the scenes with my grandma, um, I had actually secretly recorded her.
wow.
Yeah. So they were like verbatim conversations. Like so much of the book is actually verbatim.
Wow.
Yeah. So I was really, really lucky that
Yeah.
way. And then as you know, like once I hit the part of the story where I went to egg donors, then I was like, okay, I know that I'm writing this book, therefore I know I have to really double down on like recording everything that's happening.
Wow. Okay. So I'm like, I'm still like sort of like chills. Like, how, okay. So I mean, the book is here, and the book is, it's, you've spoken to so many different people from different walks of life, both from Jewish organizations, non-Jewish organizations, for, in America and Canada, all different places all over the world. What was your, when besides this, like, wanting to share this because it was like truth is stranger than fiction, what was your goal with writing this and sort of distributing it, and who is your target audience? Like, who do you want to have this book in their hands? Okay, I'm not sure if that was a complete grammatical correct sentence, but I think you know what I'm trying to say.
Totally know. Yeah. So my goal was really kind of twofold. One was to provide a resource for people going through fertility treatments and their support network and the medical world and their friends and their family, just to kind of get an inkling of what we're going through, right? Because you can see it from the outside, but you don't actually, there's like not really understanding what's really going on unless you've lived it yourself,
Right.
right? And like, so there was that education piece. There was a bit of catharsis that went into it, like me trying to kind of heal myself by sharing my story. There was this deep sense that hopefully this will make other people feel less alone in their own journey, to feel that they're not broken, to feel that it's not necessarily because of anything that they did in their past. It's like, fate dealt them a crappy hand,
Totally.
and that they're not the only ones to whom fate decided to laugh a maniacal laugh and be like, here you go,
Again.
deal with that, yo.
Right. Again and again and again.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And again and again. Yeah. And like everything that I read leading up to it, because it's only really recently that there has been so much written about miscarriage and infertility. Even like 7 or 8 years ago when I was going through it, I couldn't find anything really. Like either it was too medical or it was like these little vignettes of a couple paragraphs that were completely out of context.
Right.
And, you know, it's like, okay, well, what does that leave me? And then you go to the hospital after for a procedure, whether it's a DNC because there's products of conception that are left over, or because you're going through a miscarriage or whatever, and they hand you this pamphlet afterwards and are like, here's a list of counselors you can call. And I'm like, okay, this is totally not helpful to me because I am devastated right now and I don't have the wherewithal to try and find somebody that I like and to call 10 people and to repeat my story 10 times and hope that they are somebody that I can handle as a counselor, right? And so I actually have this thing like, why don't we have counselors right from the moment we're pregnant?
Yeah.
Whether it goes well or whether it goes badly, because if it goes south, you want somebody that you trust
Totally.
and that you can share your story with. And so in writing the story, writing Catalog Baby, I'm like, maybe this will be, not a human talking to them directly, but like some kind of place that people can go to to get that kind of like third party counseling. And you know what I mean? Like I don't purport to be any counselor whatsoever, but it's a shared story. And even though everybody's story is so different, there's the commonality of like that deep grief. There's that commonality of like, what does this fundamentally do to you as a human? And like your pregnancy journey or your fertility journey is completely informed by your social circumstances, your financial circumstances, your spiritual, your religious, like everything changed, whether you have a partner, whether you're single, whether you're gay, straight, whatever, like everything is an ingredient to make it a different journey. But there are also lots of commonalities and lots of meeting points.
Look, that's exactly it. I think that the sharing of a story, like, is such a powerful vehicle to helping people feel less alone, and people pick up on the different pieces that resonate with them, and that's the essence of it. It's the sharing of the story.
Yeah.
And so it's incredible. It's really incredible what you've done and what you've been able to create. Tell people where they can find the book, how they can get it, so that we can make sure that they know.
So if you go to my website, catalogbabynovel.com, you'll have a whole bunch of links. You can get it online through the usual channels, Indigo, Amazon, and a bunch of bookstores all over North America carry it. You can order it directly from me, but then you have to pay for shipping unless you live in BC or Vancouver. And where else can you get it? Oh, I can send it as an ebook, either through Amazon or directly through me through BookFunnel. Yeah, so there's lots of different ways that you can
Okay.
get it.
Okay, I will, after this, after we post this, and we're praying that it saves and posts, but either way, I will make sure to link it and people can swipe up and get it. I think the easiest one probably is through Amazon for people. So I'll make sure to link it and so people can find it. But Myriam, thank you. I'm so grateful that, first of all, we were able to do this because, like, again,
Yeah.
it's been 8 months, 9 months, I knows anymore, but it's been a long time. And
Thank you for persevering.
oh, look, your work is incredibly important and people need to know about it because you are, look, besides sharing the story and the journey of going through different aspects of infertility and trying to, move from IUI to IVF to donor egg, donor sperm, like all of the different pieces that you went through, which are so relevant to so many different pieces in the community. You're also doing it. You did this as a single mother, and I think that speaks to a very powerful part of the population that feels so alone and feels like nobody understands what they're trying to do and accomplish. And people can now hold your book or read it online through an ebook and say, hey, she did it. And like, nobody can guarantee anything in life, right? Like, we all recognize that going through this journey, but it's helpful to sort of have that, like, that talisman, right? That, like, if she did it, then maybe I can do it too. And it's an
Yeah.
incredible thing. It's an incredible thing. So thank you.
You're welcome. And I'm also like, if people want to send me a PM or whatever, like, I'm also happy to be like, hey, I can answer whatever questions I can. Or if you need like a little rah-rah, whatever, I'm happy to do that as well.
Amazing. Amazing. Okay. Thank you again. I will make sure that we tag and link all over the place so people know how to find you and the book. Just thank you for your work. Thank you for this. It's incredibly important piece to be able to put into the fertility library for people to know that exists. So thank you. And for you also for persevering, for coming on live. So
Thank you so much. Thanks everybody for watching.
thank you guys. Okay, good night. Good night.
All right, good night.
Okay. Take